Hello and welcome to this webinar here in King's Cross, in London, in England, where we're going to be talking about Mass, this new range of furniture which we were going to originally launch in the Milan Furniture Fair, which got sadly cancelled. Then we were going to show it in New York, and then we were going to show it in Shanghai. And of course, we've not been able to do any of that, and we're stuck with showing it first here in London. But that's kind of appropriate because the Mass range is a series of objects which are actually made in Somerset.
Dorset.
Oh, damn. I've got that wrong already.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
In Dorset, not far from Stonehenge, which I think, you know, from my perspective, is kind of great because it's a monolithic set of furniture.
Yeah.
Very heavy, very primitive.
Yeah.
But also quite refined. And I've got here Francis, or Fred as I call him, because it's Francis Russell Design.
Fred from Somerset.
Francis Russell Design, is that right?
Yes.
Which we abbreviate to Fred. That is really the maker of these quite monumental pieces of furniture, which have had a lot of complaints already because the people that actually deliver them have now refused to bring them in because it's a four-man lift.
Yeah.
But first I wanted you to maybe introduce your company and tell us a bit maybe how you got started in the metalwork business, because I responded particularly well to the visit to the factory, which is in an idyllic part of the countryside, and is filled with the most amazing machine tools. So I was very jealous. So tell us about your facility and how you got started.
Yeah, I mean, I was sort of slightly in the wrong place at the wrong time. I'd sort of fallen out of school and
what age?
Was
15.
Yeah. Quite obsessed with sort of machinery and making things. And a friend of the family was involved in the interior design business up in London, and they wanted somebody to make lanterns and furniture for them, which I said slightly inaccurately at that stage that I could do. So yeah, spent a few years just sort of raising the game and learning how to do it, and we've been doing it for 35 years now, working predominantly with designers. Whilst we have our own design department, that's doing manufacturing design. That's working out the sort of structure and what everything should look like. The concepts all come from designers, which is why this is perfect. You came to us with this, and then we work out how it all bolts together. So we're based in rural Dorset. We're in an amazing village called Wimborne St Giles, which has a phenomenal house at the centre, which has recently been restored. And we moved there a couple of years ago. Our landlord who restored his house was very interested in the creative arts and wanted to have a business doing that sort of thing there on the estate. So we moved there a couple of years ago. So we are we're makers predominantly. We have, as I say, the design department so that we can work out what it is we're going to make and convert that into what is essentially engineering. We've got a very broad range of engineering disciplines going on in the workshop, but we also have artisans and sculptors. So we can mix the whole thing together and take on more or less anything. We quite like a challenge.
So yeah, I gave you a challenge, but I mean, what I was fascinated with going to Dorset, not Somerset.
Yeah.
I did pass through Somerset to get to Dorset.
Did you?
Yeah, I think so.
That was a mistake.
Yeah, I did get lost.
Yeah.
I'm a city boy, okay?
Yeah.
And I've always been a bit cautious about the countryside, but what was amazing was when we did the photo shoot, you suggested that we take the tables out into the field and surround it with the horses, and you got stuck in, you got your forklift truck stuck in the mud. So that was tragic.
We like that kind of problem.
Okay. So do you think there's a handicap of being in an off-piste location?
I don't think that wasn't part of the sort of decision making. I like the idea of having a business in a rural area.
So what I loved was the amount of space was phenomenal.
The space is great. The people are great. You know, we've got good people, some relatively local. It's a good place to have a business.
Okay, so you know, we've been making things all the way around the world, and I always found it very difficult to make stuff in England. People tend to be quite specialists, and like to stick to what they normally do. So it was kind of nice to have your positive attitude. What I thought was a really simple project turned out to be more complicated than we thought. My basic idea was to get the simplest piece of metal, which approximated a plank of wood, and try and make as many typologies of furniture, archetypical furniture, that I could just from this simple extrusion. And I thought that you'd be able to knock that out in a few days, but of course, it was much, you know, the simpler the thing is, the more difficult it is to make. So tell me why.
Right. I think that's right. I mean, we've got with the mass range, essentially we've got two elements. We've got this brass section, and then we've got the end plugs that go in it. But getting all this to fit together and work structurally, there's quite a lot going on inside it.
Yeah, it's like magic.
It's quite like magic. And brass, it's so easy just to think you're going to buy in your brass and it's going to be just a material that is reliable and straight and the surface is reliable, but none of that's actually true. It's much more like sort of selecting timber.
Really?
Yeah, you've got to select at the top of this table. We have to select for straightness. We have to select for sort of indentations in the surface.
So what metal would you have used to have
always brass.
No, but I mean, if it was aluminium, would you have those problems?
Aluminium would have been easier from a sort of construction point of view, but
it'd been cheaper as well, right?
Possibly. But we were concentrating on beauty, I seem to remember. Yeah. And
on truth to materials, and we wanted it in gold.
Brass is which we buckled fairly early on that suggestion. But brass is a fantastic material.
So it moves in the manufacturing process, the polishing process, or it just comes not straight.
It comes not. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that has happened to this before it ends up being a nice rectangle with nice sharp corners on it. So all the sort of structure inside it is all kind of fighting with each other. You know, it wants to bend, it wants to go. As soon as you put a cut in it, it introduces a big curve in it as you release the tension. So there's a lot of fighting with it. But it's a good material to be working with.
Okay, but you're fighting with it, which is a new term in metalwork for me.
How much metalwork? I know you've done actually quite a bit of metalwork.
Actually, yes.
Yes. Fighting with metal is something which happens.
So you're going to tell us the secret of the invisible joints? No, actually don't.
Am I not?
No, it's a trade secret, right?
Is it? Or is it just too boring?
Bit both.
Okay, let's not do that.
We'll say, go on, hang on, we've got audience participation here.
Ask your feedback on whether you want to hear how
okay, maybe an executive summary.
What, on how we put it together?
Yeah, because just to finish off the train of thought here, so the plank of wood was one thing, but then the objective here is really to make a kit of parts, right?
Yeah.
So ultimately, if this project works, I've done one piece, which is this piece. Various designers in the studio have participated to make other pieces. I have one other piece. Actually, no, I have two other pieces here. And then other pieces are other designers in the studio.
Other designs,
And then the objective is really that we make it slightly more open source, tell people which joins they can make, right angle, 90 degrees, and the rest of it. We cost them up. And then just with the amount of material and the amount of joints, we should be able to allow other people to design their own pieces. So what I've been experimenting with is really the idea that rather than try and do a finished piece of work, I'm opening up a box of a kit, much like Meccano, where other people can make a better piece of furniture than I could at the beginning. That's the plan.
Yeah, I think that was one of the big appeals for me. Actually, was just seeing what people came up with. And yeah, we've worked out all the sort of various joints and how to do them. All the fixings are it's all mechanical. It's all, so I know I'm straying into territory you didn't want to hear. It's all mechanical, it's all bolted together, and all bolted together invisibly inside. We don't have any surface fixings showing. And we have sort of chassis inside where we need it. But fundamentally, we have boiled it down to the sort of the various different joints that need to be done. You know, you've got that, you've got coming in at an angle, all that we've now got resolved. So we should be able to cater with what anyone throws at us as an idea, and providing it's structurally sound, we're going to be able to make it.
Yeah, one of my favorite projects from when we did a kind of what we call a doodle session is that I just get everybody in the studio to work on the system, was a whole farmyard with all of the fencing made out of this. Yeah. I'm not sure I can afford it yet.
No.
So you think I mean, you've got much more experience than I have actually of tricky architects and specifiers wanting custom things, right? Do you think it's realistic to think that you can reduce the number of options in terms of fixtures and fittings and give people the toolkit that they need to actually specify their own? I mean, I know from selling tables is that nobody wants this one. They always want a smaller one or a bigger one.
I think, you know, obviously we're going to get caught up in the sort of bespoke nature. What we're producing is a sculptural piece, and we are going to get caught up in sort of resizing these pieces. But in terms of sort of more adventurous shapes that get thrown at us, I think that's what we need to do. I think that's what could make this really exciting. And yes, it's about process, it's about you know, sort of getting the design sorted, I would say the engineering sorted, and sort of moving quickly enough. But I think it's perfectly doable. I think it's an exciting new territory for a design company.
Good. So you think it might work? I mean, so you think there's a demand?
I think it will work.
Bloody better.
Yeah, I know. Bloody better for me too.
Okay, so the Meccano set is you know, obviously a massive influence on me, and you know, the idea that I don't produce a finished object is kind of was appealing initially. I did try it with the IKEA collaboration that I did out of aluminium extrusions first.
Right.
And there was a moment where it was working a bit too well, and people were making really horrible versions of my original kit, which is quite upsetting, actually. Yeah. So
but that is a risk.
Well,
and how do we feel about that risk?
Well, I think we can control it. I can tell you not to make that.
What if somebody wants a brass farmyard?
I think that's a great idea.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, the thing that appeals to me also, given as though, like I say, the majority of, in fact, the biggest country of origin in this whole store, where we've got many different objects and accessories, furniture and lighting, is actually Germany.
Is it? Yeah.
Yeah. So we've got our biggest purchasing is from Germany. Right. We make things in China. Electrical components are mainly made in China now because they dominate that trade and they're so good at it. You know, India for handicraft, and I'm really keen to do more in the UK. Not just for the skills. The skills still are significant here, but also speed of action.
Right.
So you know what I'm looking for here really is also less waste, because I think when you do purchase from other lands, you're really looking to fill a container. You're having to predict. You're chasing absolute best price.
Yeah.
You're making big predictions about what the market will buy, And like I say, you make a table, nobody wants a 2-meter one, they want 2-meter 40, right? So the thing I'm looking forward to is less waste and nothing made until a customer really wants it.
But I think, you know, if we apply all the sort of manufacturing disciplines that have been sort of out there since the 50s, all the sort of lean manufacturing disciplines, you know, from Japan, from Toyota, all that about how manufacturers interact with their clients.
And also with their supply chain. Right?
All that's, yes, all that's there. All that
so
thinking
seriously, you've studied Japanese just-in-time production
Studied
techniques.
is a strong word for anything that I've ever done. But
right. You've read about it.
Yeah,
on the internet.
I've been told about it. I've been told about it. Okay. No, I'm interested in that, and I'm interested in how you, obviously, as a maker that's making design stuff, I'm really interested in how we can relate with the design companies we're working for. And we don't want to be making sort of piles of stock and it's sitting there, and as you say, it all being the wrong size and it getting a scratch on it. What we need to do is we need to work together, with this whole just-in-time manufacturing and all that going on. That's what I'm interested in. That's why I'm interested in the sort of bespoke side on the sort of Meccano thing.
Well, what does just-in-time mean in the furniture business?
Just too
like
late.
A few weeks.
Just too late, quite often.
A couple of months.
I think that it's important to set the horizons carefully.
We're not promised too much.
I'm not promising anything.
Okay.
I'm steering.
It's more like slow food.
I'm steering wildly clear of your question.
Okay, no, I'm interested because, you know, efficiency is also something, you know, like I say, the UK has always been good at making things.
Yeah.
They tend to be specialists and they tend not to be able to, or not particularly to want to make something new, in my experience. Now, my experience in trying to source in the UK is already 20 or 30 years old. Do you think that the attitude of British manufacturing has changed? What's left of it?
I think there's been a huge change. And I think that's the only way that British manufacturing can survive. There's been a lot of government-backed help for manufacturing businesses, and that's all been around these Japanese disciplines, lean and Kanban and all that.
Well, hang on, just stop right there, because I've heard this term many times, and honestly, I think I pretend I know what it means, right?
Okay.
But when you say lean manufacturing, you're really talking about not holding any stock, or what?
Well, that's
of components.
That's a part of it, but there's also it's a complete philosophy around manufacturing. It's a complete philosophy around how you store your tools, how because it's just so much easier just to go like that and get the tool you need, rather than have to go right. I've got to go all the way over there and come back with the tool. And it's just a matter of how you organise the workspace and
right.
how all that's.
I was fascinated by how organised your workspace was. Now, you had a completely new unit, and I just thought, this is not fair. I've always had really messy workshops, number one. I've already had really small ones.
A messy workshop.
No, I didn't want. I wanted it to be tidy, but I never had the discipline. Right. So, given that you left school at 15, were you always kind of OCD?
No, OCD is.
It's a good thing if you're a manufacturer. I'd say.
No,
yeah.
OCD is not how I describe myself.
Okay. But your tidy mind.
I am. No, I wouldn't describe myself as that either. I'm just very interested in making things and how you can do it and how you can do it really well. And I've been really lucky that I've been exposed to all these sort of opportunities to make some crazy things for places all over the world. And we found a way. We built our new workshop to be the sort of definitive metal workshop for the trade that we're in, and it works well. And the people in it want it to be an environment that is okay and safe to be in.
Yeah, I felt safe.
Did you feel safe?
Yeah, until we went out into the field in the mud.
Well, we have to go back.
It got a bit sticky.
Yeah. But it's, I mean, because that's all important.
Because that bull looked a bit dangerous, didn't it?
Yeah, yes, the animals.
So just out of interest, so I'd like to move the conversation on to something which is more about the material again.
Yeah.
Now, brass goes in and out of fashion.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we've seen it from, you know, in furniture, boule furniture from the 18th century in France, used as trim.
Yeah.
I've seen it a lot in India. It came into fashion again, just so kind of Art Deco.
Yeah.
I mean, there's been many, many phases of brass. It's also a living material in the way that you're describing, but more from the finishing perspective. The problem I always have is that this table looks amazing when it's delivered from the factory. A few fingerprints later, it might look like it's a bit messy. And then later on, it takes a life of its own, with its own patination, its own color, and becomes a very unique so how do you manage the state between hyper shiny and then something which you've given a bit of character to? And how can I get this fingerprint off that I've just made?
You wipe it now with your t-shirt, but you don't do it round and round. You wipe up and down like that.
Okay.
Wipe with the grain.
Okay. It's got a grain.
It's got grain, yeah. All materials have a grain. This plank section has a linear grain in it, and it's so when we're working with this, we only ever work with it up and down. Always keep it linear. So yes, I mean, this table has been here for a few months. It's wiping it. I mean, it's not dramatically different from having a timber table. It doesn't, you know, it won't like having wine spilt on it and not wiped off. And the fingerprints, a soft cloth will take off these fingerprints. If brass develops its own, in sort of its first month, after it's polished, brass goes from being sort of quite silvery and then sort of settles back to this more sort of yellow color. And that is obviously the oxidization of the surface, which in fact protects it. And once you get that on it, you just keep wiping it over. You've got a surface that, yeah, it is going to move. It is going to change color over the years.
Well, if I've got a massive scratch in it, we'd have to send it back to you.
But if you get a massive scratch in a timber table, you've got the same problem. It's going to require specialist attention.
And if I wanted it to go completely green, like a Henry Moore statue, what would I do? I could, couldn't I, in principle?
It would sort of go a black-green color.
What would I put on it to get a proper patination? I mean, it's not bronze, right? But brass also, you can get a series of different colors.
It will go. I would be cautious about.
What about urinating? Because that's an old Roman technique.
That's fantastic. It's particularly popular with dinner guests.
I don't mean whilst you're using it.
Oh, well, you're saying in private?
No, I'm saying when, in the history of patination, my understanding was that urine has the right qualities to turn the brass green.
Ammonia is a good thing.
Okay.
Yes, moving into the chemical realities.
Yeah.
Ammonia works for patinating brass, and there are ways. But actually, if you just wipe it off, clean it, and leave it, it will develop its own life. Mm-hmm. After 10 years, it will look different if you don't repolish it.
One of the issues we had, particularly with the metallized lights in copper, was seaside, right? So just like bicycles rust by the sea. What do you think would happen to this table in a seaside environment?
I think you would need to keep wiping it.
Okay, with the grain.
With the grain, please.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So we've got a studio audience.
We have got a studio audience, yes.
How about some questions?
We have some questions.
I'd love to do that.
Studio audience.
Yeah. Have you got any questions?
Or should we give you some time to come up with questions?
I'm thinking about that. I've not seen brass extruded before. Is that also trade secret, or is that... It's drawn rather than extruded, which is the difference between pushing and pulling. So this section starts off actually as a diameter, and then it's pushed through a series of rollers.
which makes the rectangular section by geniuses.
In Italy.
Yeah.
In Italy.
Yeah. There's
What sort of cleaning products would you recommend? Because for me personally, if it's a beautiful table, but if I see a spot on the table, it's going to annoy the shit out of me.
Okay.
If I see that spot.
Okay.
What would you recommend after me spending thousands of pounds on the table? I see a spot that's annoying me every time I sit down for a meal.
A lot of the spots you will get out just with a microfiber cloth. If you need to go further than that, there is a product called Autosol, which will clean this table back to original, and then we use a wax to protect it. We use a very, very fine wax, which we supply in the care package with the products, or we will.
Okay, so we're asking for questions from the internet as well. Have we got one? Genius. Okay. Splendid. So Jules at Core Team says, "Who is the consumer?" Really? Who's the consumer? Well, I can't imagine that this is your everyday dining table, but I'd probably do that, you know. For me, it feels like the kind of thing that needs an amount of space around it. I can imagine it being very much in a hotel lobby, or large architectural spaces. So, Francis, there's a question to you. How do you work with made-to-order requests? How do you work with made-to-order requests?
Well, we
let's get back to the page.
How it works is we receive all the information, and that can be, okay, it's got to look something. It can be a mood board, or it can be a sort of drawn up concept. Me and my team back at work look over it. We do a quick check on whether actually it suits what we can do and what we can make. And then we sit down. Everything, inevitably, there is a system. We have all the costings from the sort of 7,000 jobs that we've done. So we more or less can identify what costs are going to be.
You have a kind of design engineering kind of facility from what I observed.
Yeah.
The other part of the question was, what's the most challenging piece in this collection to make?
In this collection?
Yeah.
I think probably the table that we're sitting at. I think
really?
That's the most challenging. It's difficult in the junction between the legs and this brace across here. That's all quite challenging.
Then there's a question to me. Tom, why did you decide to change the original design of the mass collection to this new version? Well, that's a very good question, which I'll answer myself.
Because we were all sitting around the original mass collection.
So mass originally was inspired by Indian furniture, which is clad with a very thin foil of often silver gilt sheet and hammered onto a wooden frame. It's a really beautiful technique that I'd seen a lot and thought, wouldn't that be amazing, minimalized? You know, often it's highly patterned and what's it called when you bash the metal? Repoussé. Yeah. So I thought it would be a great technique to use in a minimal way. But of course, when you put the sheet over a wood carcass and you make these very simple shapes, that's when the smallest spot and the smallest scratch becomes evident and stays in the metal. You could almost, if you wrote a letter on the previous brass table, your signature would come out as a kind of
that foil is very
graffiti. So I loved it, and I liked the way that it accumulated this history of use. But we were getting something like 35% returns. You, the gentleman who doesn't like spots, would really not have liked this one. And again, because they were made in India, even in container ships, the moisture content changes, and then when it gets to the UK, changes again. So the wood would warp a bit as well. So there's all kinds of reasons to bring the production back to the UK. And, you know, I think we have this hope that pieces that we make will last a lifetime or more. I was talking about 18th century furniture. I still have my great-grandmother's table that she bought as an antique, which was already 150 years old. So, you know, if we can get something right, which is built with longevity in mind, which is made out of a noble material, which is cared for because it is precious, then from a sustainability point of view, although this might be kind of terrifying in terms of the amount of brass that's in it, the secret is really the long life. And then
it's forever. Nothing's going to happen to
even with a long life, if it's rejected, it's just made from a single material, apart from the secret fixings. And then it can be recycled. It could actually be chopped up and made into candlesticks, right?
Yeah, it can. It's a slightly pain.
So I have a question. How is each extrusion joined together? Is it possible to personalize its length and width?
The width of the plank section, this rectangular box is not, we can't personalize that, but we can certainly make the tables wider. We can make them up to 5 meters long.
5 meters, okay.
Was that challenging?
No, that's amazing.
Yeah,
I'd love a 5 meter long table, thank you.
Right, so we can make them up to 5 meters long, but quite difficult. It would need to be a very, very special customer. And I'm not sure there's one of those in the room.
And a forklift truck as well, right?
Yeah. It would be incredibly heavy. So yeah, we can customize it. And in terms of how they're joined together, all the fixing, everything is fixed together mechanically. There are, in some places, magnets which hold it together, but that's...
I think you're giving away too many secrets here. What's the next question?
Is there the option to have a matte surface rather than a highly polished surface?
Yes.
Yes, madam.
Yes, madam. Here is a brushed brass finish, quite fingerprinty, but yeah. That was one of the finishes we looked at, wasn't it?
Yeah, we had long debates about this, you know, and then ended up just thinking, let's go really bling.
Yeah.
And see what happens. And I think, you know, what's kind of nice about these isn't so much the bling aspect, but it's the reflectivity. When we took it out into the field, the photographs we took, which were reflecting the sky, were pretty extraordinary, I thought.
There was quite a good one reflecting your face as well.
Yeah, I don't know about that. Okay. It's like up my nose.
So another question, can you explain how the legs are joined to the table as well as...
Well, there's a lot of joining questions, isn't there?
I know. I'm really feeling the pressure.
No, it's good that people are interested in joints. I didn't think they would be.
Well, perhaps we should have bought a sort of exploded sculpture.
Next time. There's a whole other Zoom call right there.
It is, yeah. So there is, in fact, an aluminium framework. I don't think... Yeah, you can't quite see it. There is an aluminium framework, and there are tie rods that go down to the bottom of the legs, which then pull up that triangle into a piece of aluminium at the top.
I think you're spoiling the magic.
I tried to make that sound interesting. I really tried to make that interesting.
No, I'm interested because I did not know that.
I know, but we're talking to quite a lot of people who might not be interested.
Okay, right.
Tom, if money weren't an option, what piece would you design?
Farmyard.
I wouldn't mind just a whole shack, you know, like a shed type, you know, like a Monopoly house, maybe. You know, I think having a little golden building that I could go and be me in would be kind of genius, right? And again,
I'm shifting slightly uncomfortably.
No, but you know, it's also because of the, like I say, the archetypical nature of the construction. It makes me think of those quite basic structures, like wooden sheds, like picnic tables that are really planky, you know. And I think that plankiness is what I like. It's again, it's kind of twist on the archetype, which is what I like about you know, about the regular separation. And the plank is, I mean, I started looking at planks. There's this amazing, do you know who I mean by Enzo Mari?
No.
Enzo Mari is a communist designer from the 60s who really is radical designer dedicated to improving people's lives through design. He did a project called Auto Progettista or something, right, where he just sold a bag of planks of wood with 1,000 different recipes for making different things from this bag of wood. Right. So it wasn't a design, it was just a whole series of things that you could make yourself. And I think that was really quite influential in this. I'll send you a link, Enzo Mari. Yeah. And I can't pronounce it.
So can we just send people boxes of
brass? Yeah, you've got a load of offcuts. Might be the best way to go about it.
We've got some of them here, so just piling them up, because every time you get near the stuff, you just pile it up into the stacks.
Another question that we have, I'm wondering, this is for you, Tom. I'm wondering, do you design the piece first and then think what material would go well with it, or do you let the qualities of material dictate the aesthetic of the piece?
I think these questions are impossible to answer because every piece has its own narrative and its own departure point. I mean, in this case, we've already explained that there was an earlier version which wasn't the same as this. I mean, I quite like the idea that you're upgrading and changing the design to to suit the next theory or the next customer. The S chair next door has also gone through maybe 5 or 6 versions, and it feels a bit more like in car design where there's always a new model coming out. Maybe actually that's a bad analogy because they're inevitably worse than they were at the beginning. I think this is actually an improvement, but I've forgotten the question.
Do you design the piece first and then think what material will go with it?
No. I mean, I pretty much start with the material and then think of what piece I might make out of it. So it's often the absolute opposite. We did have some tube offcuts in the workshop, and I did do a lot of stacking, and I still do. Wherever I go, I'll be making a stack. Yeah. They're all over the studio actually. Yeah.
And what pieces are available to buy now, and what will launch next year?
Well, this table is the one that's ready for production. I mean, in principle, all of them are available, but they have longer lead times. It may well be that I might even sell you these ones now, to just get on and make the next one. So everything is available. We'd have to give different production lead times. I mean, Francis, you were explaining that you locked down your factory, so effectively that wasn't because you didn't have any orders. It was because of you had to lock it down for COVID, and now you've got a backlog of orders, which means that you can't do it as fast as you'd hoped.
We'll be back in a position sort of early next year to be able to produce stuff in sort of meaningful timescales, but we have lost a lot of time through COVID, and we have some sort of significant commissions that we're working our way through at the moment. But we will get to the other side of them. And
but I'm not going to tell anybody that. I'm going to say you can have this, no problem.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, that's it. Okay, any more questions from the floor?
Thank you.
That's it. You're not worried about your spots anymore?
Not anymore.
No, okay, great.
It's a good question.
All right, well, Francis, thanks for coming. I think we'll do we'll do the joint section from your factory. I think it would be great for people not to see here, but to see where the stuff is made. Yeah. I mean, I've got a lot of faith that we can make more things in the UK. I've got, and that really comes through the visit to your factory, which was a real joy to visit. And also, you forget as a city person how much of England is really interesting and beautiful. So if there's another side product to the nightmare that is COVID, is that people appreciating their country a bit more. Yeah. And like I say, for me, I'm hoping this is the beginning of a longer adventure with you making more stuff for us. We've learned a lot in terms of joints for sure, and brass care through you. Yeah, and long may it continue.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Good.
Over and out.